One of the places where it's so difficult to have clear, honest communication is in social and sexual settings. So when you're interacting with other people, that there can often be subtext and context and hidden meanings. And, I'm saying one thing, but my face is saying something completely different. It can be difficult to work that out in general everyday life. No one teaches you how to do that.
Hello, everyone. I am Michelle Melville Kashan. I'm the Community and Content Director here at Sexual Health Alliance. And today I'm with Liam Wignall. Liam will be presenting at our online event, the Non-Vanilla Weekend, which is our weekend with Midori. So welcome, Liam.
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me.
Liam, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am a senior lecturer in psychology at the University of Brighton in the UK, and I specialize in sex research, but more specifically, research into BDSM and kink subcultures. So I published on that stuff and documented the internet's impact on how things have changed over time. I wrote about it in my book, Kinky in the Digital Age. But then, specifically for the Non-Vanilla Weekend, talking about a recent strand of research I've been doing, looking at the overlap between neurodiversity and
Yes, that's going to be so interesting. So, for anybody who's joining in who's not really sure, okay, let's give a broad definition of neurodiversity.
So, neurodiversity is a term that encompasses a broad range of things. I think more of the common um, types of neurodiversity that we might think about include autism, ADHD, but can also include things like dyspraxia, dyscalculia, synesthesia, just neurodevelopmental differences. So neurodiversity is this kind of umbrella term that brings all these different things together. What I'm going to be focusing on more specifically in the research I've been doing is looking at the one specific type of neurodiversity, which is autism, which is a neurodevelopmental difference which encompasses different ways of thinking, feeling, communicating, and experiencing the world. Yeah, hopefully that kind of answers your or gives a broad overview.
Yeah, fabulous. And so, what led you to want to study this?
It was it was kind of a light bulb moment that I've been doing research in subcultures for about 10 years now, on a range of different things. So I've looked at how one community, the pup community, who embody animal-like qualities of young dogs and engaging or is a broad where they embody the young dogs and bark, bite, scratch, lick, nuzzle. I'd watched this kind of community develop, flourish, and create kind of individuals create unique identities around it. Part of when I was doing the research into this subculture, I attended different events across the UK, and I would just witness different types of behaviors, different ways of interacting. And I kind of had this in my head. I was looking at these interactions, and I commented on it one day to one of the pups in the room. It was I won't give too much details about the story because I talk about it in my talk.
Yeah.
But I said, have you noticed these kind of ways that people are interacting? And they just kind of said to me, well, yeah, we're all autistic. I was like, oh, okay. And it just sunk with me and it stayed with me. And the more I started to look out for signs of autism or ADHD or neurodiversity, and the more I read around it, the more I was like, okay, there's potentially something here. So I never went into this with a kind of top-down approach of like trying to think about all these different things and how they might relate to kink. It was being in the room, interacting with the participants, as I was kind of doing ethnographic observations. And it was very much that kind of light bulb moment. Fast forward, I then started doing kind of online surveys and interviews with autistic people who engage in kink, and just finding out just how huge this world is and how big the overlap is, and just the kind of funny, I don't know, thing within the kink scene of they all knew about the overlap between autism and kink. It was just like a common thing. It was just the researchers and the external people being like, wait, is this something? And everyone's like, yes, yes, Liam, how are you so late to the party? I'm like, okay, well, I'm here now. So yeah, it was a light bulb moment.
Yeah, that is so interesting. And so, why do you think it's important to study this overlap?
The the general hmm, in general populations, the rates of autism based on a range of different studies are around 1 to 2%. And that includes formal diagnoses and self-diagnoses because it can often be so difficult to and traumatic and negative for the people kind of going down the formal route of obtaining an autism diagnosis formally. So within kind of the research and the community literature, etc., people accept self-diagnoses as well. So about 1 to 2%. The fact that my findings are found it's about 50%, based on different scales, based on different cutoff points. So either 50% or 33% if we're being really stingent. In some or examples, I think that in and of itself warrants some level of exploration. On the kind of broader philosophical side, there's so little research into sexuality in general and the overlap with neurodiversity. And often when those two kind of things are brought together, there's an element of desexualization that happens. That, it's more important for autistic people to do A, B, and C, or people with ADHD need to think about, navigating the world. Like, we're not going to think about these people being sexual beings as well. How can they manage that kind of stuff? And it's just, it's simply not true. As we've kind of seen from the Netflix show Love on the Spectrum, autistic people want intimacy. They desire intimacy. They desire closeness. And researchers also found that they also desire. Um, so to utilize this population or not conduct research into how neurodivergent people might navigate sexuality, I think is doing a disservice. Hopefully, my research into neurodiversity and is providing examples of how neurodivergent people can navigate one type of sexuality, kink, and for some it's not. Sure, I get that. But still, there's elements of intimacy and connection and communication that I think has application for how we think about sexuality in general.
Wow. And so just to recap, so what you found in your studies is that up to 30 to 50% of people in communities have some sort of neurodivergence or autism.
So I did an online survey with specifically the pub play community.
Yeah.
So people who engage in pub play or communities, pub play subculture, broader. And at the end of the survey, we administered the AQ short form, which is a tool that is often used as an indicator for when a full autism diagnosis might be appropriate. So it's not a case of if you score above a certain amount, you're autistic. The score on the scale is likely indicative of autism. So, it's a complex thing. One particular scale does not mean neurodivergent or not. But it is often used in research and it does have high levels of validity. So it does tap into what we think it taps into. And if you look at the research, generally people who score high on this scale do end up going on to get a full autism diagnosis. So there is some truth to it. In the pub sample, about 50%, about one in two, scored 65, which is the initial cutoff point. And there's another cutoff point of 70 because there's potential, again, kind of research stuff that I won't bore you with, but there's a stringent cutoff point of 70. That is, if you want to be properly good in your findings, use that one. And that goes to about 33%. So in that pub sample, yeah, I think somewhere between 30 and 50% document high levels of autistic traits, I think is the technical way of thinking about it. And then actually something interesting for the talk at the non-vanilla weekend with Midori, I'll be disclosing and talking about some research I've done recently, which is currently unpublished, like we're waiting to get it published, which looked at samples in general and then tried to see what is the preponderance of autistic traits. And as a teaser, we find pretty similar stuff. There are differences that I'll go into in the talk or the workshop, but yeah, I think the broad takeaway is there are high levels of autistic traits in populations.
Yeah. And I've seen a lot of like funny memes and things that are meant to be joking. And I wanted to get your take on these because some of them are like, well, autistic people love cake because you've got somebody telling you exactly what to do and giving you very specific instructions. So did you find there's any truth to that?
Yes. The one of the studies I've done over the last 9 or 10 months has been interviewing autistic kinksters, specifically trying to find out what is it about that appeals to autistic individuals. And we had a bunch of different, me and my colleagues had a bunch of different hypotheses or potential rationales that we came up with around communication, around the gear that people wear, around the different types of activities. And one of the things I always think about with memes, they have to start from somewhere. There has to be like some kernel of truth. And I think with that one that you've just said about the clear communication, 100%, that communities for I don't know, I was going to say centuries, but for a long time have been praised for how they navigate certain topics and activities. So the main one is consent, that communities and activities and scenes and all this kind of stuff is often praised in how they deal with consent and that it is at the forefront of which activities do you want to do, how much do you want to do each of these different activities, and just clear, open, honest communication, recognizing that consent can be withdrawn, consent is an ongoing thing, consent can fluctuate, that you might say yes at one time, but then in the moment, you might not be feeling it. A lot of how kinky people engage in has benefits to non-kinky people, non-kinky settings, etc. So I think for some autistic people, this idea of, oh, I like clear communication in my everyday life. One of the places where it's so difficult to have clear, honest communication is in social and sexual settings. So when you're interacting with other people, that there can often be subtext and context and hidden meanings. And, I'm saying one thing, but my face is saying something completely different. It can be difficult to work that out. And, in general everyday life, no one teaches you how to do that, how to navigate those conversations. For settings, communication is key. Honesty and openness is key because there are risks associated with certain kink activities that it does play on the boundary for some activities, play on the boundaries of consent and safety, and what people can take, enjoy, etc. So if you say to an autistic person, what if I provided you with an environment where clear, honest, open, direct communication is at the forefront and you can engage in a wide variety of things? I think it starts to make sense why there's so much appeal.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I mean, because you have to think about all the context that goes into a sexual encounter. And, I don't think we're encouraged to speak up about how we feel about something like during a sexual encounter. Like, yes, I like that. Yes, that feels good. No, I don't like that. Could you do this instead? And we're not really taught anywhere about that kind of communication. So when you get into a setting, especially if you're neurodivergent and somebody is telling you all these things, like you're going to tell me if you like this and you're going to tell me if you don't like this. And it's like, oh, I have permission to be vocal and like get my point across and tell somebody how I feel.
It's also permission to be vulnerable. That one of the things within sexual settings, they are often for most people deeply personal, intimate. When you are undressing, you are, in some ways taking off your armor, you are being physically vulnerable. When you are letting somebody engage in very intimate activities, you're being emotionally vulnerable. So I think there's often not a misunderstanding, but almost kind of an unwantingness to say things that might hurt somebody's feelings. Um, that is like, I'm not really enjoying this, and it's nothing to do, let's say it's a particular activity or whatever. It's like you might not want to say to the other person, I'm not enjoying this thing, but can we do this instead? Because that person might take it personally, particularly for neurodivergent people. There's rejection sensitivity, which can mean that these things are taken a bit more personal, a bit more negative than intended. Within settings, there's a very clear understanding that these things are meant to be discussed. That the only way that in a particular, I don't know, bondage is a thing that comes to my mind. If you are tied up and the other person is focusing on something else, they're not going to know that your hand is starting to go cold, or that actually your hand above your head is getting really awkward and you're getting a pain in your shoulder. And it's not that you're not enjoying it, but it's literally, I need to just change position, or something like that. There's an understanding within, and the claims I'm making are very broad and there's intricacies and all that jazz. But there's an understanding in scenes and settings that saying something isn't working or is not the right thing or not enjoyable is not a direct personal attack on any person. It's thinking about how can we make this the best experience for us both. Again, particularly when you're engaging in things that play on the boundaries of consent, safety, emotional vulnerability, etc., you might want to do all these range of different activities, and you might have chatted about them beforehand, but then when you're in the moment, it can be quite overwhelming to give power up to somebody, to take control of somebody, to allow people to inflict pain, or bunch of different kink activities. So yeah, I think I forget what your question is, and I feel so, or was, and I feel so
No,
sorry to your
okay.
editor because I will just ramble. But yeah, hopefully there was some kind of nuggets of information.
Yes. No, and I was engaged and I forgot what my initial question was. But I was going to ask you, because you briefly talked about this earlier, about how people with different disabilities get left out of the conversation. People, I mean, and this is just in general, any type of disability or any type of neurodivergence, or, people with autism, ADHD, like they're not seen as sexual beings. So, as sexual health professionals in our community, we've got therapists, educators, counselors, coaches, medical professionals. What are some things that we can do to make sure people are getting included in the conversation?
One of the things I've been very clear in my research, and when I'm doing this kind of stuff, is I am going back to the community, and I always have in all the research I do, and make sure that I love the mantra about nothing about us without us. I make sure that the research I'm doing, the claims I'm making, are sort of backed up and supported by the community. So I have to go to events and get feedback, and I have kind of trusted community connections who, they read drafts of my paper and my books and that kind of stuff. And not only do they kind of comment on my grammar and spelling, they also comment on the claims I'm making.
Yeah.
So I think that is so important. With the neurodiversity research, when I had that initial light bulb moment, part of what I was thinking was, oh my God, this is good research, and this needs to be done. And at the same time thinking, am I the person to do it? And the answer was potentially. What I did was reach out to a researcher who specializes in autism, and think about include and they're a great researcher, Dr. Rachel Mosley at Bournemouth University. They've got experience working with these communities and lived experiences with autistic individuals. So that was kind of my way of being grounded and thinking, if I'm going to do interviews with autistic people, I want to make sure that I am as accommodating as possible, that I'm doing everything I can to be good. So I reached out to before I started doing interviews and before I'd done these online surveys, etc., I was speaking to autistic kids and saying, look, these are the type of questions I want to ask. What do you think? And I've never had such critical and great feedback as I have again, as I, yeah, by going to these people, because they would just say to me, this is how I interpret this question. Is that how you want it? I'm like, no, not really. Like, it could be interpreted this way or that. And they're like, no, you need to be clear. I was like, okay. There was kind of no, I don't know if I can swear, but there was no bullshit. There was no thinking of, academic fluff or, oh, this is a Dr. Wignall researcher. They were just like, you've asked me a question, I'm going to give you an answer. And yeah, I benefited. I know we're thinking about how we include the people, but actually, this has been such a learning experience to me about navigate and work with autistic and neurodivergent communities. Yeah, so I think including the perspectives of the people that we're researching. I know for some of the people attending the workshop, they won't all be researchers and they'll be working with clients who have neurodevelopmental differences or potential kink backgrounds. It's, I think, part of the thing that we can do, and just as people, is around acceptance and around clear communication, understanding. We may not always have all the knowledge, but we can certainly, when working with these individuals, think about, okay, look, I'm willing to learn. I'm happy for you to teach me. It's not your job, and I don't expect you to be the person who teaches me everything. And people can do their own research, and hopefully that's why people are coming to the
Yeah.
non-vanilla weekend. And that is, clearly a great step. The second step is recognizing that there will always be more to learn, and if you are accepting and accommodating of that, then I think that's sort of half the battle. For neurodivergence in general, if people wanted specific tips about how to work with neurodivergent people, think about the communication style and how you can be kind of direct, open, honest, and potentially think about the different ways that you can communicate. So I'm thinking now more about ADHD. Some of the participants I interviewed were ADHD, so autism and ADHD diagnoses simultaneously. And many of them wanted the question schedule of the interview beforehand so they could read it, process it, and think about it. So how, it's not just how you communicate, it's the types of communication that maybe virtual versus in person versus email. Maybe there's preferences between those different things. And I am, full disclosure, I am not the person who has all the answers and knowledge around how to work with neurodivergent people or indeed people. These subcultures aren't homogenous groups that one thing will not always work for one other person. So yeah, to summarize, if you're already thinking about how to be more accessible to different communities and people, that is part of the battle and that is the first step.
Oh, I love that. That's such a great tip. All right, before we go, can you give us one reason why our audience should come listen to your talk?
It will be more rehearsed than I have been for this interview. It The talk has a lot of the stuff that I've talked about here, but more in depth and more application. So thinking about, okay, well, there's 50% of Liam talked about the 50% number. What does that actually mean? And how can I embed that into my own work? What are some of the takeaway messages? And I think it's also, yeah, thinking about how we can embed acceptability and understanding in our everyday lives and practice
Yeah, I
that way.
love it. I know a lot of people are really excited about this topic and really passionate about learning more. So this is going to be such a great talk.
Cool. I hope, yeah, see you soon.
All right. For anyone interested in attending the non-vanilla exceptional weekend with Midori and Liam and learning more, it's happening Saturday, August 9th and Sunday, August 10th, 2025. The event is happening online. It's very accessible. You can get tickets at our website at sexualhealthalliance.com. Thank you for being with us today, Liam.
Thanks for the invite. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for watching our video. Do us a favor, share this with someone who might benefit from this information. Your support helps us reach more people with important sexual health information. If you're passionate about this space, we know you'll enjoy these videos, so check them out. Please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and remember, you are exceptional.